Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're stepping way past the safe tourist trails and safety nets to uncover the truly dark, raw, and absolutely fascinating reality of the Indian jungle. We're going to be diving into some incredible source material from top wildlife experts that completely strips away the romanticized views of the forest. We are talking about brutal survival, correcting literally centuries of folklore, and facing the grim truth about the modern threats these ecosystems face today. We've distilled all these incredible insights into a highly focused slide deck for you. So get ready, because it's going to be a wild ride. Okay, let's dive into this. We've all seen the movies, right? Those massive Bollywood blockbusters where the heroic protagonist wrestles a giant tiger bare-handed and somehow miraculously comes out on top. But can a human actually survive a hand-to-claw fight with an apex predator in real life? To really answer that, we have to look at real-world encounters, completely devoid of any cinematic magic. And spoiler alert, when you're facing down 200 kilograms of pure muscle and lethal instinct, human confidence means absolutely nothing once physical contact is made. The source material shares this absolutely terrifying yet miraculous survival story of a man named Ankit. So Ankit was just out gathering firewood, a daily necessity for a lot of locals, when he came face to face with a tiger. In a moment of just sheer, unbelievable desperation, as the tiger opened its mouth, Ankit reportedly grabs its tongue. No way, right? But here is where reality hits incredibly hard. The tiger merely swiped at him. Just a quick swipe, but that single swipe packed so much raw, explosive power that it literally tore his skull open like a watermelon. Now, he survived, but it required massive, extensive surgeries just to put his head back together. It's a brutal, sobering reminder of the unmatched physical power of these big cats. But human desperation can sometimes lead to some truly absurd bravery. Take the documented story of Rajvardhan Sharmaji. He was managing a resort in Bandhavgarh when a highly stressed, injured tigress named Mohini suddenly leaped right onto a tourist's vehicle and started severely attacking someone. Acting purely on adrenaline and instinct, Sharma did the unthinkable. He literally grabbed the 200-kilo tigress by the tail and pulled. Can you imagine? Surprised by the sheer audacity, the tigress turned her aggression entirely toward him. Now, knowing exactly how tigers hunt, Sharma instantly covered the back of his neck with his hands. Tigers kill by snapping the neck. By tactically protecting this one vital weak point, he barely, and I mean barely, survived the encounter. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it transitions us right into Section 1, Jungle Myths and Facts, Correcting Years of Folklore. For generations, the stories we've been told about the jungle have been heavily steeped in folklore. Let's start with a massive linguistic confusion that has actually made its way into textbooks and our everyday language. For years, so many people have mistakenly believed that the word shur translates to lion and bog translates to tiger. But linguistically, historically, and in Urdu, shur actually means tiger. The correct term for a lion is babar-sher or singh. So if you've ever sat there and wondered why the iconic villain in the Jungle Book was named Shere Khan when he was so obviously a tiger, well, the author had it perfectly right all along. The local folklore and translations just kind of got mixed up over the decades. And that brings us to another massive myth. Think about that classic cinema trope we see all the time, the vengeful animal. You know the one? An animal's wronged, it somehow remembers the specific human who hurt it, and it stalks them across the wilderness for days just to exact its bloody revenge. It makes for fantastic television, sure, but is there actually any biological truth to a tiger holding a grudge? Well, the reality is much more pragmatic. Animals simply do not have the psychological framework to hold a grudge or plot complex vengeance against a specific individual. If you throw a stone at a tiger or scream at it, yes, you will irritate it for sure. And if you are within its striking distance when it's annoyed, you are in extreme danger. But a tiger isn't going to track you down a week later to settle the score. They operate on 3 really simple drivers: proximity, perceived threats, and hunger. The whole idea of a calculated, vengeful predator, that's strictly a human projection. Section 2, the fascinating world of tigers, social hierarchy, and survival. And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when we move beyond the myths and into the actual lived reality of these animals. The social dynamics of wild tigers are incredibly complex and honestly super unforgiving. You essentially have 2 types of male tigers. The alpha, or dominant male, controls a massive territory, like 15 to 40 kilometers, successfully meeting with multiple females and aggressively marking his area. Then, on the other hand, you have the floaters. These are younger or weaker males who have been violently expelled. They just wander the fringes, avoiding fights, constantly on the move looking for a scrap of food or a fleeting chance to mate. And here is a totally fascinating fact for you. Female tigers show zero loyalty to a mate, none. Their only biological imperative is securing the strongest genetics for their cubs. If a new, stronger alpha arrives, a female will readily abandon a floater to ensure her offspring have the absolute best chance of survival. Section 3. The real story of Jim Corbett, a hero's complex legacy. Now, it's pretty much impossible to talk about the Indian jungle without bringing up Jim Corbett. But before we look at the man himself, we really have to understand the terrifying environment he operated in. 436. Let that number sink in for a second. That is the staggering, verified human death toll attributed to just one single animal, the infamous Champawat tiger, before Jim Corbett finally tracked and stopped her. Back in the early 20th century, these man-eaters literally terrorized entire regions, bringing daily life to a complete standstill and creating this desperate life-or-death need for skilled hunters. Corbett is so often remembered purely as a savior and a pioneering conservationist. But a closer look at the historical records details some serious gray areas of his legacy. He hunted well over 100 big cats, and while he started hunting as a young boy simply to put food on his family's table, his habits eventually went way beyond basic survival. He kept numerous tiger skins as personal trophies. In one heavily documented instance, he shot a massive, non-man-eating 10-foot 7-inch tiger, a local legend known as the Bachelor of Powelgard, quite simply because his sister Maggie wanted its skin for her drawing room. It really shows how the early days of conservation were heavily tangled up with the practices of trophy hunting. Let's move to and see how this builds right into Section 4, the dark reality of forests, the ultimate threat. Because what is happening right now, deep in the shadows of the forest today, is far more sinister. 25 crore rupees. That's 25 billion if we're looking at the total market. Actually, scratch that. Let's keep it to the per animal value. That is the estimated black market value of a single poached tiger today once its parts reach international destinations. 25 crore for one animal. That is an astronomical financial incentive. It's the absolute core reason why these magnificent animals are being systematically, ruthlessly hunted down even today. And why on earth are they so valuable? The source material details the absolutely tragic and absurd demands of illegal overseas markets, primarily for unproven traditional medicines. You see, a tiger isn't just killed for its skin. Its bones are ground into powder, falsely sold as some sort of vitality medicine. Its mustache hairs are woven into amulets. Its claws and teeth are highly prized as trinkets. Bizarrely, even tiger urine and feces hold high monetary value in these illicit markets. Every single part of the animal is commodified, packed up, and sold. So you might be wondering, how does a 25 core product get smuggled out of a protected forest? Well, it's a chilling, highly organized, almost corporate-style hierarchy. First, you have the poacher. These are often poor, young, local boys who know the forest intimately. And they don't use loud, obvious guns. They use silent, unbreakable clutch wire traps placed right near water sources. Next up is the collector. This person organizes the whole operation and uses immense wealth to grease the wheels, sometimes paying massive bribes, upwards of 1 crore rupees, to corrupt officials just to look the other way. Finally, you have the transporter, who literally smuggles the goods across borders, sometimes simply folding the heavy skins underneath traditional clothing like saris to avoid detection. The whole shebang is a massive, well-oiled criminal machine. So, what does this all mean? The crucial point is this. When we hear stories of the jungle, we are conditioned from childhood to fear the tiger. We imagine this massive 200-kilo predator lurking in the brush, waiting to strike. But when a single animal is worth millions upon millions on the black market, and human networks are perfectly structured to violently exploit that value, it completely flips the narrative. The most dangerous thing in the forest isn't the tiger at all. It's human greed. And it leaves you wondering, in the fight for true conservation, who exactly are we trying to protect the jungle from? Human or animal? Think about that. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.
Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. If you're a 20-something adventurer gearing up to step off the beaten path and head out into the wild, well, you absolutely need to hear this. We are about to completely shatter those over-the-top cinematic myths where the hero somehow wrestles a massive tiger to the ground. Today, we're swapping all that fiction for a gritty, realistic field guide on how to actually survive an encounter with a tiger or a leopard. We're drawing on some incredible, hard-hitting insights from wildlife expert Vivek Awasthi. So get ready, because out there, the jungle really doesn't care about movie scripts.
Here's a quick look at our syllabus for today. We're going to cover the dark forest reality, surviving a big cat, defensive tools and tactics, lessons from real encounters, man-eaters and history, and finally, we'll break down science versus superstition.
All right, let's dive right into Section 1, the dark forest reality.
So I want to ask you this right off the bat. Can a human actually fight a tiger barehanded? We've all seen it in blockbusters, right? Where a character just physically takes on an apex predator. But what happens in reality when someone tries to go toe-to-toe with one of these animals?
Yeah, the answer is a definitive, absolute no. As wildlife expert Vivek Awasthi bluntly puts it, a single swipe from a tiger's paw will literally split a human head open like a watermelon. We're talking about an absolute powerhouse of an animal that can weigh anywhere between 180 to over 250 kilograms. You simply cannot outmuscle them, and trying to physically fight one, it's just a guaranteed losing battle.
Moving on to Section 2, surviving a big cat. Let's talk about the immediate steps you have to take.
Okay, so your survival in this critical moment completely depends on reading the distance between you and the cat. Step 1 is the golden rule. Never, ever turn your back and never run. If you run, you instantly trigger their chase instinct, and trust me, they are vastly faster than you. Now step 2. If the tiger is far away, do not stare directly into its eyes. Look slightly to the side. You want to keep it in your vision, sure, but you want your body language to calmly say, hey, I'm not a threat, I'm just passing by. But step 3, if that tiger starts coming towards you or actually charges, the rules flip entirely. Now you must lock eyes, make yourself as loud as possible, and stand your absolute ground.
And that perfectly captures the core dynamic here. Surviving a charge is 100% a psychological battle. Awasthi explains that as long as the cat hasn't physically touched you, you are locked in a mind game. If you panic, if you break eye contact, or if you lose your confidence for even a second, the game's over. You have to convince that predator that attacking you is a very, very dangerous mistake.
Which brings us to Section 3, defensive tools and tactics, your last lines of defense.
So what is actually in your survival toolkit? First up, pepper spray or bear spray. Now, unlike with bears where you might spray an early warning cloud, with a charging tiger or leopard, it's really only effective at the exact moment they jump at you. It's a true last-second deterrent. Second, putting a stick on your head. I know it sounds kind of silly, but it actually works. We'll get to why in a second. Third, if contact is absolutely inevitable, you must guard your neck with your arms. Big cats kill by snapping the neck, so if they can't get to your neck, you are buying yourself a fighting chance to survive.
Now going back to that crucial trick with the stick on the head, it relies on something called perceived height. You see, predators naturally target prey that is smaller, shorter, or maybe seated, like a crouching animal or a child. They generally avoid towering animals like giraffes. In fact, guides in places like the Masai Mara will often just place their walking sticks vertically right on top of their heads when a lion approaches. By faking immense height, you completely confuse the predator's risk assessment. All right, let's look at Section 4, lessons from real encounters. Let's break down 3 really intense, real-world encounters from our sources to see how these tactics play out. First, there's a local man named Ungit who survived a tiger by miraculously grabbing its tongue. Then, Vivek Awasthi himself, who faced a charging leopard by standing his ground with his pepper spray ready. And finally, a resort owner named Rajwarhan Sharma, who actually survived a 200-kilogram tigress landing right on his jeep by pulling its tail to confuse it and then tightly guarding his neck. But I really want to pause on Ankit's story for a moment. Because yes, he fought back and he survived by grabbing the tiger's tongue, but the tiger's claw is still connected. Ankit suffered a completely shattered skull. The sources describe his head as being literally opened up, requiring massive year-long surgeries. This is just a grim, necessary reminder for anyone watching. Surviving does not mean walking away unharmed. The physical pull of an attack is devastating. Now contrast that absolute nightmare with Vivek's own personal encounter. He accidentally found himself within 100 meters of a large leopard that instantly went into charging mode. But Vivek held his ground, he locked eyes, and he prepared his pepper spray. Because he projected absolute confidence and refused to run, the leopard got confused and eventually just backed off. That psychological mind game is what saved him from a horrific physical struggle. Moving to Section 5, man-eaters and history. 436. I just want you to let that number sink in. That isn't a statistic from a battle. That is the documented human death toll of a single animal. The infamous Champawat tigress. When an apex predator actively turns its attention to hunting humans, the level of destruction is almost unimaginable. Here's how that dark history unfolded. In the early 1900s, this specific tigress started killing in Nepal, and she actually managed to evade the Nepalese army. She was eventually driven across the Sharda River and into India's Kumaon region, where she just continued her reign of terror. By 1907, she had claimed 436 lives. She was finally tracked down and stopped by the legendary hunter Jim Corbett. It's a chilling example that perfectly illustrates how a single desperate animal can literally hold an entire region hostage. And that brings us to our final section, part 6, science versus superstition. So, we've all heard the cinematic myths, right? The revenge-seeking snake, or the tiger that memorizes a specific person's face for years just to hunt them down. Well, the scientific fact is completely different. Tigers operate on pure pragmatism, hunger, immediate irritation, and defending their territory. If you throw a stone at a tiger, yeah, it might attack you because you irritated it in that exact moment, but it's certainly not going to track you down 3 villages over to settle some kind of personal vendetta. Let's just rapid fire through a few more of these facts to ground us. While we are terrified of tigers, they usually kill efficiently and instantly by snapping the neck. Bears, on the other hand, are actually known in the forest for inflicting the most agonizing, drawn-out deaths. Also, there are local legends saying that singing in the jungle summons fairies or ghosts. Actually, no, it just irritates the wildlife and broadcasts your exact position. Ultimately, animal attacks are almost never personal. You just happen to step right into their strike range at the wrong time.
Which wraps up our explainer today, and I want to leave you with this final thought. Will you rely on cinematic myths, or will you trust the dark, grounded realities of the forest the next time you step into the wild? The jungle is absolutely awe-inspiring, but it demands your utmost respect and serious preparation. Keep your wits about you, remember those psychological mind games, and stay safe out there. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.